In Fulchester Crown Court, the trial is taking place of Trevor Luckhurst and Jill Sawyer. The two defendants are accused of conspiracy with persons unknown to cause an explosion at the premises of International Worldwide Spectrum Limited. They are also accused of causing the explosion, which ripped open 3 offices and damaged a printing press belonging to the firm. It's the second day of the trial, and evidence has been heard from the night watchman who picked them out of an identification parade after seeing them run from the building shortly after the explosion took place. A forensics expert has already stated that the bomb was a homemade contraption constructed from pieces of an alarm clock, and Detective Inspector Roberts, who arrested the accused, has told the court of finding a pair of plimsolls in Luckhurst's possession which contained particles of glass from the wrecked office windows. Also found at the house were pieces of 2 alarm clocks. Inspector Roberts is still giving evidence.
Inspector, you have told us that you searched the house where the accused were living and found evidence implicating them in the bombing of the IWS building.
Yes, sir.
Did either of them say anything to you?
Yes, sir. On showing them the search warrant and explaining that I'd received permission to go over the premises, Luckhurst said, "What do you hope to find, Charlie?" Miss Sawyer laughed and said, "If you are after hash, where is your dog?"
And after you found the clockwork pieces, the plimsolls and the letters?
Luckhurst said, "What the hell is all this about? Why can't you leave us alone?" Miss Sawyer said, "Give me those letters, you pig, they are mine." They were taken to the station, cautioned, charged the following day. After being cautioned...
By cautioning, you mean that they were warned that anything that they said might be used in evidence?
Yes, sir. Afterwards, Luckhurst said, "Jill had nothing to do with this. You got nothing on her, let her go." Miss Sawyer said nothing.
Thank you, Inspector.
Inspector, it would appear from your description of the search that you did most of the talking. Sergeant Smithson was the quiet member of the partnership, was he? Now, you made no reference, when you arrived with the search warrant to 68 Brownlow Gardens, to the other inhabitants of the house.
No, sir.
Why not?
The door was opened by Luckhurst. Miss Sawyer was the only other person present.
I think you'll agree it's time we did so. As you well know, Inspector, 68 Brownlow Gardens is what is commonly referred to nowadays as a commune, is it not?
I believe so, sir.
Well, you know so. In the past, members of your division have been called there to settle complaints made by neighbours of excessive noise, have they not?
I don't know what a commune is, sir. That is why I said I believe so.
I'm not about to compile a dictionary, Inspector Roberts, but I would define a commune as a group of people living together who have agreed to pool their resources and who relinquish the idea of private ownership.
That definition sounds worthy of the best dictionary, Mr. Elliot. Perhaps you have missed your vocation.
We shall see, my lord. Now, the fact is, many people have lived at 68 Brownlow Gardens over the past year, have they not, Inspector?
I have no record of the tenant, sir.
Number 68 Brownlow Gardens is owned by the defendant, Trevor Luckhurst. He inherited it last year from an uncle. Following the dictates of his political opinions, he opened the house to like-minded friends. One of the cardinal rules of this house was the abolition of private ownership, even down to personal clothing. Inspector, did the defendants at any time admit to the ownership of the pair of plimsolls?
No, sir. However, they were found under the bed occupied by them, and the plimsolls fitted Luckhurst's feet perfectly.
Did either of them admit ownership of the random pieces of clockwork you uncovered?
No, sir.
Let's be more specific, shall we? Did either of them strongly deny ownership of both the plimsolls and the clockwork pieces?
Yes, sir.
One would not have thought so, listening to your account of their remarks.
I only took statements made immediately after they were confronted and later charged.
My clients insist they denied ownership at this time.
Not to me, sir.
Not even to the silent Smithson?
I beg to repeat, sir, with respect, there were no other people present on these premises at the time we searched them.
Perhaps not, but with respect, there most certainly had been up until the day before you arrived. I shall produce evidence of this, my lord.
But not from the owner of the property, Mr. Luckhurst.
Well, the owner kept no records, my lord. And that leaves us with the letters, the evidence upon which the Crown bases its charge of conspiracy. Exhibit number 5, please. May we turn to the relevant passages? You have the originals, Inspector. I have the copies. Now then, please turn to letter number 1. And would you read off the so-called incriminating passage?
Oh, this is a letter written to Sawyer from Luckhurst, dated January the 2nd.
At this time, Miss Sawyer lived in at St. Hilda's College, Oxford.
Yes, sir.
Read the part which attracted your attention, please.
Read another of those fascist rags put out by the IWS yesterday. They have a simple answer to the state of the nation: close down everything not making a fat profit and chuck a few more million people on the dole. The trouble is, they write this spew often enough, and the fools in Whitehall will start listening. A pity someone doesn't close them down with a bomb.
And would you call that inflammatory stuff, Inspector? A pity someone doesn't close them down with a bomb?
Not in isolation, sir, but connected with the second letter and the other evidence.
Oh, well, let's hear the second letter. Read the paragraph in question, please.
Had a long talk last night about the IWS thing. Something must be done, my love. We just can't make do with waving banners outside the typing pool. Did you hear that idiot in Parliament the other day virtually read out one of the IWS magazines and said, why not? God Almighty, something has to be done to stop them, and soon.
Inflammatory stuff. And you've made no attempt whatsoever to trace the other persons living at the house, have you?
Since the defendant Luckhurst neglected to keep a record of his tenants, sir, such an attempt has not been possible.
Let's move on to the verbal statements. Now, did either of the defendants try and prevent you or Sergeant Smithson from entering their house?
No, sir.
No, in fact, when you did, Luckhurst is reported to have said, "What do you hope to find, Charlie?" And Miss Sawyer laughed, saying, "If you're looking for hash, where's your dog?"
That's correct, sir.
Inspector, leave your well-documented notebook aside for a moment. Now, let me ask you to refer to the considerable experience you've had dealing with criminals.
Yes, sir.
Do the words of either Mr. Luckhurst or Miss Sawyer sound to you those of guilty people with something to hide?
That's difficult to say.
Well, surely not. Both defendants are educated and intelligent. Do you think they'd have been so flippant in their remarks if they knew that upstairs was incriminating evidence? These letters? The clothes they'd worn the night the IWS officers had been blown up? What the hell is all this about? Luckhurst is reported to have said. What indeed?
He also said, sir, after being charged, Jill had nothing to do with this. You got nothing on her. Let her go. He didn't include himself in this statement of innocence, sir.
And you didn't include, Inspector, your remark to Luckhurst that you would make sure Miss Sawyer got just as much as he did. Is that not so?
I did not say any such thing, sir.
I suggest to you, Inspector Roberts, that for many reasons, not unconnected with the public outcry over this bombing incident, that the police authorities were over hasty in concocting charges against Luckhurst and Sawyer.
No, sir.
That other inquiries that should have been pursued, such as finding the other inhabitants of the house, were ignored in the rush to find a scapegoat. An arrest to satisfy the national demand for action.
No, sir.
Thank you.
Inspector, did you ask Luckhurst for the names and whereabouts of his erstwhile commune friends?
I did.
Did he tell you?
No, sir.
Was there any other means of discovering who or where they were?
No, sir. They were all transients. There were no official registers to which we could refer. They paid no rent, nor were they employed in the area.
So Luckhurst would have been the only person who might have been able to help you.
Yes, sir. He denied ownership of the incriminating articles, but would not say who they did belong to.
What did he say when you asked him?
He told me to go to hell.
Thank you, Inspector. The final prosecution witness, my lord, was on remand in custody with the accused in the same prison, called Stanley Ernest Meredith.
Stanley Ernest Meredith.